The sky burned orange and red as another Kelvari warship exploded high above the battlefield. Commander Vexus of the Silurian Defense Fleet watched the debris fall like dying stars, each piece a reminder that his people were losing this war. His 4 arms gripped the edge of the command platform as the ground shook beneath him. Another explosion, another ship gone, another 1,000 soldiers dead. The Kelvari had come without warning 3 cycles ago. Their massive black ships had appeared from the dark space between stars, blocking out the sun over the capital city. Within hours, they had destroyed half of the Silurian fleet. Within days, they had taken control of the northern continent. Now, they were pushing toward the last stronghold, the ancient city of Kythera, where 2 million civilians huddled in underground shelters, praying to gods who seemed to have abandoned them. Vexus turned to his communications officer, a young female named Lyris, whose blue skin had turned pale with fear. Her 3 eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching the enemy forces advance like a tide of darkness across the plains. "What is our status?" Vexus asked, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. Lyris swallowed hard. "We have lost 60% of our ground forces, Commander. The Kelvari are breaking through the eastern defense line. Our orbital stations are gone. The last of our heavy cruisers was destroyed moments ago." She paused, her voice cracking. "We have nothing left to stop them." Vexus closed his primary eyes and took a deep breath. The Silurians had been a peaceful people for thousands of years. They had built great cities, created beautiful art, and explored the nearby stars with curiosity rather than conquest. They had believed that intelligence and civilization would always triumph over violence. They had been wrong. The Kelvari were ancient predators who moved from world to world, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply destroyed and moved on, leaving dead planets in their wake. The Galactic Council had warned the Silurians, but the warnings had come too late. By the time Vexus had mobilized his fleet, the enemy was already in orbit. "Commander!" A young officer ran toward him, nearly tripping over the rubble that littered the command center. "The Kelvari ground commander is broadcasting a message. He is demanding our surrender." Vexus felt anger rise in his chest, a feeling his people rarely experienced. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of a Kelvari warrior. Unlike the Silurians, who were slender and graceful, the Kelvari were massive creatures covered in thick, armored scales. Their eyes were pure black, showing no emotion, no soul. The commander's mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Silurians," the Kelvari spoke, his voice deep and cruel. "Your resistance has been amusing, but it is over. Surrender your city, and we will grant your people a quick death. Continue to fight, and we will make your suffering last for generations. You have 1 rotation to decide." The transmission ended, leaving only silence in the command center. Vexus looked around at his officers, seeing the despair in their eyes. Some were crying. Others stared blankly at nothing, already accepting their fate. Even Vexus, who had fought in 3 border conflicts and had never lost a battle, felt the weight of hopelessness pressing down on him. "Commander," Lyris whispered, "what do we do?" Before Vexus could answer, something strange happened. The tactical display, which had been showing only enemy positions, suddenly detected new signals. Dozens of them, then hundreds, then thousands. They were appearing from nowhere, materializing in the upper atmosphere like ghosts, becoming solid. "What is this?" Vexus rushed to the display, his 4 arms pushing other officers aside. "Are these Kelvari reinforcements?" Lyris frantically worked her controls, her fingers flying across the interface. "No, Commander, these signatures are different. The ships are smaller, faster. Their energy readings do not match any known species in the galactic database." She looked up at him, confusion replacing fear in her eyes. "I have never seen anything like this." The ground shook again. But this time it was different. The explosions were not in the Silurian positions. They were in the Kelvari lines. Vexus ran to the observation window and looked out at the battlefield. What he saw made his heart stop. Ships were falling from the sky, not crashing, but descending with purpose, firing weapons that cut through the Kelvari forces like light through darkness. The enemy's massive war machines, which had seemed unstoppable just moments ago, were exploding one after another. And from the ships, figures were dropping to the ground, small compared to the Kelvari, but moving with incredible speed and precision. "By the ancestors," Vexus breathed. "Who are they?" The answer came moments later, when one of the unknown ships flew close to the Silurian command center. It was sleek and angular, covered in symbols that Vexus did not recognize. On its side, a word was written in a language he had never seen, but his translator implant converted it instantly. Humanity. Vexus had heard stories about the humans. Everyone in the galaxy had. They were a young species from a small planet on the edge of the spiral arm, so far from the major civilizations that most considered them irrelevant. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel a few centuries ago, barely a heartbeat in galactic terms. The Council had sent observers to their world once and had reported that they were primitive, violent, and would likely destroy themselves before ever becoming a true spacefaring civilization. But here they were, their ships filling the sky, their soldiers charging into battle against an enemy that had conquered 100 worlds. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission," Lyris said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. "It is from the human fleet." "Let me hear it." A new voice filled the command center, speaking in a language that the translator converted to perfect Silurian. It was a female voice, calm and steady despite the chaos of battle. "Silurian Command, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Federation Navy. We picked up your distress signal 3 days ago and came as fast as we could. I apologize for the delay. My fleet is engaging the enemy now. Please hold your positions and do not fire on our forces. We will handle this." Vexus stared at the display, unable to speak. 3 days. The humans had traveled from their territory to Siluria in 3 days. That was supposed to be impossible. Even the fastest galactic ships needed at least 2 weeks to cover that distance. On the battlefield, the situation was changing rapidly. The Kelvari, who had been advancing with confidence, were now falling back in confusion. The human soldiers moved through their lines like water through cracks in stone, exploiting every weakness, striking every vulnerable point. Their weapons were loud and brutal, creating sounds that echoed across the plains like thunder. And when the Kelvari tried to fight back, when they swung their massive claws or fired their heat beams, the humans did something incredible. They refused to die. Vexus watched as a group of human soldiers was hit by a Kelvari energy blast. Any Silurian would have been vaporized instantly, but the humans just staggered, their armor smoking, and then continued fighting. One of them, a large male with a weapon almost as big as a Silurian child, ran directly at a Kelvari warrior 3 times his size. The alien swung its claw, striking the human and sending him flying through the air. Anyone else would have been dead. But the human stood up, spat something red from his mouth, and charged again. "They are insane," one of the Silurian officers whispered. "The humans are completely insane." Vexus could not disagree. Everything he was seeing defied logic. The humans were smaller than the Kelvari, less armored, less technologically advanced, based on what the Council had reported. They should have been slaughtered within minutes. Instead, they were winning. As he watched, a human ship, badly damaged with fire coming from its engines, turned toward a Kelvari command vessel 10 times its size. Instead of retreating, instead of trying to save itself, the human ship accelerated directly at the enemy. "They are going to ram it," Lyris said in disbelief. The collision was spectacular. The human ship struck the Kelvari vessel in its center, and both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the sky. Debris rained down on the battlefield, and the Kelvari forces, seeing their command ship destroyed, began to panic. "Why would they do that?" an officer asked. "Why would they sacrifice themselves?" Vexus had no answer. The Silurians valued life above all else. They would never throw their own people away so easily. But the humans seemed to operate by different rules that made no sense to any civilized species. Another transmission came through, this time from a human ground commander. His voice was rough, breathless, and somehow joyful despite the battle raging around him. "Silurian Command, this is Colonel Martinez. My boys and I are pushing the Kelvari back from your eastern line. These ugly lizards are tough, but they have never fought humans before. Tell your people to stay in their shelters. We will let you know when it is safe." "Colonel," Vexus finally found his voice, "why are you doing this? We have never had contact with your species. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you sacrifice your soldiers for strangers?" There was a pause, filled with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Then Colonel Martinez laughed, a strange, harsh sound that the translator struggled to interpret. "Commander, that is a complicated question with a simple answer. We heard your distress call. You were asking for help. That is enough for us." Another explosion sounded in the background. "Besides, we have wanted to punch the Kelvari in the face for a long time. They destroyed one of our colony ships 50 years ago, 3,000 civilians, including children. We have been waiting for a chance to make them pay." Vexus did not understand. The Kelvari had attacked them 50 years ago, and the humans had waited all this time for revenge. What kind of species held grudges for that long? "Your leaders approved this mission?" Vexus asked. "This war you are starting?" Colonel Martinez laughed again. "Approved it? Commander, when our people heard about what the Kelvari were doing to you, they volunteered faster than we could process the applications. Every ship you see up there, every soldier on this ground, they chose to be here. No one ordered us to save your world. We came because it was the right thing to do." Vexus turned to look at his officers. They were staring at the displays with expressions of wonder and confusion, watching as the impossible continued to unfold. The humans, these strange, violent, primitive creatures from the edge of the galaxy, were doing something no one else would do. They were fighting and dying for people they had never met, for a world they had no connection to, for no reward except the satisfaction of helping those who needed it. Perhaps, Vexus thought, the Galactic Council had been wrong about the humans. Perhaps they had been very, very wrong. Outside, the battle continued to rage. But for the first time since the Kelvari had arrived, the Silurians had something they had lost 3 days ago. The sun had set over Kythera, but the darkness brought no relief from the fighting. Instead, the night sky was lit by fires, explosions, and the constant flash of weapons that turned midnight into a hellish kind of day. Commander Vexus had moved from the command center to an observation post closer to the front lines, wanting to see the humans with his own eyes instead of through screens and displays. What he witnessed changed everything he believed about war, about courage, and about what a species could become. A squad of human soldiers had taken position near the observation post, using the ruins of an old temple as cover while they fired at advancing Kelvari forces. There were only 12 of them, facing a Kelvari assault team of at least 50 warriors. Any Silurian commander would have ordered an immediate retreat. The numbers were too uneven, the situation too desperate, but the humans did not retreat. Their leader, a woman with short, dark hair and a scar running down the left side of her face, was shouting orders in a voice that cut through the noise of battle. Her name, Vexus learned later, was Sergeant Lisa Park. "Jackson, get that heavy gun up on the second floor. Torres, cover the left flank. Nobody dies today without my permission, you hear me? Her soldiers moved with precision, each one knowing exactly what to do without hesitation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought like they had already won, like defeat was simply not something they would accept. A Kelvari warrior, massive and terrifying, burst through the temple wall, sending ancient stones flying in all directions. One of the humans, a young man who could not have been more than 20 years old, was caught by the debris and went down hard. The Kelvari raised its claw, ready to deliver a killing blow. Sergeant Park did not hesitate. She threw herself at the alien, driving a blade into the gap between its armored plates. The Kelvari roared in pain and turned its attention to her, giving the young soldier time to crawl away. Park ducked under a sweeping claw, rolled between the creature's legs, and came up firing her weapon directly into its back. The alien fell, but two more were already coming through the breach. Vexus watched in amazement. The humans were not just fighting. They were protecting each other. Every move, every action, was designed to keep their fellow soldiers alive. When one fell, another immediately moved to cover them. When one ran out of ammunition, another provided suppressing fire while they reloaded. They operated as a single organism, each part essential to the whole. "Commander," Lyris spoke through his communication device, "Admiral Chen is requesting a direct meeting with you. She is sending a shuttle to your position. Now, in the middle of a battle. She says it is urgent. She has information you need to hear." 20 minutes later, Vexus was aboard a human shuttle, flying through the chaos toward the Admiral's flagship. The shuttle was small and cramped compared to Silurian vessels, designed for function rather than comfort. Every surface was covered in equipment, weapons, and supplies. The pilot, a young human with nervous eyes, navigated through explosions and enemy fire with skill that seemed impossible. "First time meeting humans up close, Commander?" the pilot asked, glancing back at Vexus. "Yes. I must admit, you are not what I expected." The pilot grinned. "We get that a lot. The whole galaxy thinks we are just aggressive monkeys who somehow figured out space travel. They are not entirely wrong, but they miss the important parts." "What important parts?" "We are aggressive monkeys who protect our friends." The flagship was called the Unity, and it was unlike any ship Vexus had ever seen. It was not elegant or beautiful like Silurian vessels. It was rough, angular, covered in scars and patches from previous battles. But it radiated power, a sense of raw strength that made even the massive Kelvari warships seem fragile in comparison. Admiral Sarah Chen met him in the command center, a large room filled with screens, holographic displays, and dozens of human officers working frantically at their stations. She was smaller than Vexus had expected, with gray hair and lines on her face that spoke of many years and many battles. But her eyes were sharp and bright, full of an intelligence that immediately commanded respect. "Commander Vexus, thank you for coming. I apologize for pulling you away from your post, but there are things you need to know about our enemy." She gestured to a large display that showed the planet from orbit. Red markers indicated Kelvari positions, while blue markers showed human and Silurian forces. The battle was spread across 3 continents, with fighting concentrated around major cities. "We have been watching the Kelvari for a long time," Admiral Chen continued. "Longer than most species realize. They destroyed one of our colony ships decades ago, killed 3,000 of our people, and they thought we would forget. They thought we would be too weak, too primitive, too far away to ever be a threat." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They were wrong." She touched the display, and new information appeared. Detailed maps of Kelvari ships, weapons, and tactics. Intelligence reports on their military hierarchy, their supply lines, their weaknesses. "We have spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Every advancement in human technology, every new weapon, every improvement in our ships has been designed with one purpose in mind: defeating the Kelvari." Vexus stared at the information in shock. You have been planning this war for half a century? Longer. After the attack on our colony ship, our leaders realized something that most species in this galaxy never understand. There is no diplomacy with predators. You cannot negotiate with something that sees you only as food. The only way to survive is to become stronger than your enemy. So that is what we did. She pulled up another display, this one showing human military assets, thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that Vexus could not even begin to understand. What you are seeing here, Commander, is just one fleet, one of 12 that we have deployed across this sector. When we heard your distress call, we did not just send the nearest ships. We mobilized everything we had available. This is not a rescue mission. This is the beginning of the end for the Kelvari Empire. Vexus felt dizzy. The scope of what the Admiral was describing was beyond anything he had imagined. The Silurians had thought of humans as a minor species, barely worth noticing. But they had been building an army capable of challenging one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. Why did you not tell anyone? Why did the Council not know about this? Admiral Chen laughed softly. The Council? With respect, Commander, the Council is useless. They talk and debate and pass resolutions while worlds burn. We told them about the Kelvari threat years ago. They said we were being paranoid. They said we should focus on trade and cultural exchange, not war. They called us primitive because we kept building weapons instead of luxury ships. She turned to face him directly, her eyes hard. The Kelvari have destroyed over 100 civilizations. The Council did nothing. They watched it happen, species after species, world after world, and they did nothing because they were afraid. They convinced themselves that if they just stayed quiet, if they did not draw attention, the predators would pass them by. And humans are different? Humans remember everything. Every attack, every death, every injustice. We write it down in our books, we teach it to our children, and we carry it with us across generations. The Kelvari killed 3,000 of our people 50 years ago. To them, it was a small meal, barely worth remembering. To us, it was a wound that never healed. And now, finally, we have the power to repay them. An alarm sounded, and one of the officers called out, "Admiral, the Kelvari are bringing in reinforcements. 3 more battle groups just arrived in system." Vexus felt his heart sink. More enemies, more death. Even with the humans helping, how could they possibly win against such overwhelming force? But Admiral Chen just smiled. Perfect timing. Send a message to the 2nd and 4th fleets. Tell them the guests have arrived. 2nd and 4th fleets? Vexus asked. Did you think we came alone, Commander? I told you this was just one fleet. The others have been waiting just outside your system, hidden behind your moons. We wanted the Kelvari to bring in more ships. We wanted them to commit their forces to this battle. She touched another control, and the display changed. Vexus watched in amazement as hundreds of new contacts appeared, human ships emerging from hiding and forming into attack formations. The Kelvari reinforcements, which had seemed so threatening moments ago, were now surrounded on 3 sides. The Kelvari are predators, Admiral Chen said. They think in terms of prey and hunter. They never consider that the prey might be bait, and they might be walking into a trap. Outside the viewport, the battle exploded into new intensity. Human ships, fresh and fully armed, tore into the Kelvari forces from multiple directions. The enemy, caught off guard and outnumbered for the first time, began to fall apart. Massive warships that had seemed invincible were cut to pieces by coordinated human attacks. Smaller vessels tried to flee but were run down and destroyed before they could escape. Commander, Admiral Chen said, I want to be honest with you. When this battle is over, and the Kelvari are defeated, we are not going to stop. We are going to chase them back to their home system. We are going to destroy every ship, every base, every weapon they have. And then we are going to free every species they have conquered, every world they have enslaved. This is not just about saving Siloria. This is about ending the Kelvari threat forever. That will take years, decades perhaps. We know, and we are prepared to fight for as long as it takes. Vexus was silent for a long moment, trying to process everything he had learned. The humans were not just soldiers or rescuers. They were on a mission of justice, a campaign of righteous anger that had been building for 50 years. They had turned their grief into strength, their fear into determination, and their desire for revenge into a force that could reshape the galaxy. "Admiral," Vexus finally said, "the Silurians have always believed that war is the failure of civilization. We have avoided conflict whenever possible, preferring peace and diplomacy. But I am beginning to understand that peace without the strength to defend it is just another form of surrender." Admiral Chen nodded. "Peace is precious, Commander. We value it too. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice. The Kelvari have terrorized this galaxy for too long, and no one has been willing to stop them. Until now." She extended her hand, a gesture that Vexus recognized from his studies of human culture. He reached out with one of his forearms and grasped it, feeling the strength in her grip. "After this battle," Vexus said, "I want to discuss an alliance, a permanent partnership between our peoples." Admiral Chen smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "Commander, we would be honored. But first, let us win this war. And then we will have all the time in the universe to talk about friendship." Below them, on the surface of Siloria, the battle continued. But for the first time, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The humans had come, and with them, they had brought something more powerful than weapons or ships. They had brought hope. Hope. Dawn came slowly over Cathera, the first light of the sun painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the silence was not filled with explosions and screams. The guns had stopped. The ships no longer burned in the atmosphere. The Kelvari were defeated, their surviving forces fleeing toward deep space, with human ships in pursuit. Commander Vexus stood on the steps of the Grand Temple, the ancient structure that had somehow survived the battle despite everything around it being reduced to rubble. Behind him, the city was waking up. Civilians who had spent days hiding in underground shelters were emerging into the light, their eyes wide with disbelief as they saw the devastation around them. But mixed with the horror was something else: relief, joy, the impossible realization that they were still alive. A human transport landed in the plaza below, and a group of soldiers climbed out. They were covered in dust and blood, their armor scorched and dented from countless impacts. But they were smiling, laughing, embracing each other in celebration. One of them, a tall man with a bandage wrapped around his head, raised a bottle of something and shouted words that the translator converted to celebration sounds. Among the soldiers was Colonel Martinez, the officer who had led the ground assault. He saw Vexus watching and climbed the temple steps to join him. "Beautiful morning, Commander," Martinez said, looking out at the ruined city. "I know it does not look like much right now, but give it time. Your people will rebuild. They always do." "How can you be so certain? You have never met us before yesterday." Martinez shrugged. "I have seen a lot of destroyed cities, Commander. Some of them were human cities. And every single time, people find a way to put the pieces back together. It is what we do. It is what you will do." Vexus turned to look at the human more closely. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in Martinez's eyes, the weight of everything he had witnessed and done during the battle. Despite the celebration happening below, this soldier carried something heavy inside him. "You lost people," Vexus said. It was not a question. Martinez nodded slowly. 23 from my company, good soldiers, good friends. Private Chen was getting married next month. Sergeant Williams had a daughter who just started school. Corporal Davis taught himself to play guitar during the trip here. He was terrible at it, but we all pretended he was good because it made him happy. I am sorry. Do not be. They knew the risks. We all did. And they would have been angry if we had not come. That is not who we are. More transports were landing now, bringing supplies, medical equipment, and relief workers. Human doctors worked alongside Silurian healers, treating the wounded without caring which species they belonged to. Engineers assessed damaged buildings, already making plans for reconstruction. Food and water were distributed to refugees, handed out with smiles and gentle words that needed no translation. Vexus watched it all with a growing sense of wonder. The humans had fought like demons, killing with efficiency that bordered on terrifying. But now that the battle was over, they had transformed into something entirely different. They were gentle, caring, almost soft in the way they helped the Silurians around them. It was as if they had two completely different souls living inside them, one for war and one for peace. Colonel, I need to understand something, Vexus said. Your species confuses me more than any I have ever encountered. You can be so violent, so destructive, yet also so kind. How do you reconcile these two parts of yourselves? Martinez thought about the question for a long moment before answering. When I was young, my grandmother told me a story. She said that inside every human there are two wolves. One is peaceful, loving, generous. The other is angry, violent, destructive, and they are always fighting. Which one wins? Martinez smiled. The one you feed. We spend most of our lives feeding the peaceful wolf. We build families, create art, help our neighbors, try to make the world better. But when someone threatens the people we love, when something evil rises up that cannot be stopped any other way, we let the other wolf out. We feed it our anger, our grief, our desire for justice, and it becomes unstoppable. But how do you control it? How do you make sure the violent wolf does not consume you entirely? That is the hardest part. It is a constant struggle. Some of us lose that battle. Some of us get lost in the darkness and never come back. But most of us find our way home because we have something worth coming back to. Family, friends, the promise of a better future. We fight so that we can stop fighting. We destroy so that we can build again. Vexus considered this deeply. The Silurians had always suppressed their darker emotions, viewing them as weaknesses to be overcome. But perhaps that had been their mistake. By denying the existence of their capacity for violence, they had left themselves vulnerable to those who embraced it completely. The Galactic Council will want to meet with your leaders, Vexus said. They will have questions. Many species will be frightened by what you have shown today. Let them be frightened. A little fear is healthy. It keeps people honest. Martinez looked at him seriously. But make sure they understand something important. We did not come here to conquer your world. We did not come to take your resources or enslave your people. We came because you needed help, and we could provide it. That is all. Some will not believe you. They will think you have hidden motives. They can think whatever they want. We will prove them wrong with actions, not words. Actions are all that matters in the end. A Silurian child, a young female no more than 10 years old, came running up the temple steps. She was carrying a bundle of flowers, the purple ones that grew wild in the hills outside the city. She stopped in front of Martinez, looking up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Are you a human?" she asked, her voice small but unafraid. Martinez knelt down to her level, his battle-scarred face softening into a smile. "That is right. What is your name?" "Talia. My mother says you saved us. She says you came from very far away to help." "We did, and it was worth every kilometer." The child held out the flowers. "These are for you, to say thank you." Martinez took the flowers with surprising gentleness, handling them as carefully as if they were made of glass. "They are beautiful. Thank you, Talia. I will keep them forever." Vexus watched this exchange with something stirring in his chest. This human soldier, who had killed dozens of Kelvari warriors just hours ago, was now accepting flowers from a child with tears forming in his eyes. The contrast was almost too much to process. "Talia," Vexus said, "would you like to meet more humans? I think they would like to meet you too." The child nodded eagerly, and Martinez called out to his soldiers below. Within moments, Talia was surrounded by humans, all of them kneeling or crouching to be at her level, all of them smiling and laughing as she showed them her flowers and asked them endless questions about their world. More children began to emerge from the shelters, their natural curiosity overcoming any fear they might have felt. Soon, the plaza was filled with the sounds of laughter and play, Silurian young ones climbing on the human soldiers, asking to see their weapons, demanding to hear stories about Earth. "This is what we fight for," Martinez said quietly, watching the scene. "Not territory or resources or power. This, the chance for children to grow up without fear, the chance for families to live in peace, the chance for species like yours and mine to become friends instead of enemies." Admiral Chen arrived later that day, accompanied by a group of high-ranking officers and diplomats. The formal meeting took place in what remained of the council chamber, with Vexus representing the Silurian government and Chen representing the Human Federation. "We have driven the Kelvari from your system," Chen reported. "Our fleets are pursuing their retreating forces, preventing them from regrouping. Intelligence suggests they are falling back to their secondary staging area in the Korath system." "What happens now?" Vexus asked. "Now. We finish what we started. The Kelvari have been a plague on this galaxy for too long. They have destroyed civilizations, murdered billions, and spread fear across 1,000 worlds. We intend to end that threat permanently. That will be a long war." "Yes, but we are prepared." Chen leaned forward. "Commander, I want to offer you a proposal. The Human Federation seeks allies in this campaign, species who are willing to stand with us against the Kelvari. In return, we offer protection, technology sharing, and full partnership in building a new galactic order, one based on cooperation and mutual defense rather than fear and isolation." Vexus looked at the other Silurian officials in the room. He saw hesitation in some faces, but also hope. The old ways had failed them. Perhaps it was time to try something new. "We will need to discuss this with our full council," Vexus said carefully. "But speaking personally, Admiral, I believe the Silurians would be honored to stand with humanity. You have shown us what courage truly means. The least we can do is learn from your example." Chen smiled and extended her hand once again. Vexus took it, feeling the weight of the moment. This was not just a handshake. It was the beginning of something new, a partnership between two species that would reshape the future. Outside the chamber, the celebrations continued. Human and Silurian voices mixed together in songs that neither fully understood, but both felt deeply. Children played in the rubble, already turning destruction into adventure. Families reunited, crying tears of joy as they found loved ones they had feared were lost. And across the galaxy, word was spreading. The humans had come. The humans had fought. The humans had won. Species that had lived in fear of the Kelvari for generations were hearing about the Battle of Siluria, about the strange beings from the edge of the galaxy who had appeared from nowhere and defeated the undefeatable. Some heard these stories with disbelief, others heard them with fear, but many heard them with something they had not felt in a very long time: hope. In the years that followed, historians would mark this day as a turning point, the moment when the balance of power in the galaxy shifted forever. The Kelvari War would last another decade, spreading across 100 systems and costing millions of lives. But the outcome was never really in doubt after Siluria. The humans had declared themselves, had shown what they were capable of, and the galaxy would never be the same. Vexus lived to see the end of the war, to witness the final surrender of the Kelvari Empire, to walk the streets of their conquered homeworld as a representative of the Allied Species Council. And everywhere he went, he told the same story, the story of the darkest day in Silurian history, when all hope seemed lost and death came from the stars. And then humanity descended from the sky. They had come as strangers, as mysteries, as the primitive species that nobody thought mattered. They had come with fire and fury, with weapons and warriors, with a determination that defied all logic and reason. But they had also come with compassion, with kindness, with a fierce love for justice that burned brighter than any star. The Silurians had asked for help, and the humans had answered. Not because they had anything to gain, but because helping was simply who they were. Because somewhere deep in their DNA, in the code that made them human, was written a simple truth that the galaxy had forgotten. When someone is in trouble, you help them. No matter the cost, no matter the distance, no matter the odds, you help them. And that, more than any weapon or ship or soldier, was what made humanity truly remarkable. That was what made them heroes. That was what made them the hope of a galaxy that had almost given up on hope entirely. The battle was lost. And then humanity descended from the sky. And everything changed.